Hey, how's it going? Jason here. This video is going to take us through the basics of Arduino, specifically what an Arduino is and how we use them, and also how to get started, where to download the development environment, and everything we need to get into controlling circuits. So first of all, if you're completely new to Arduino, what I recommend you do is go to their website. It's arduino.cc. And you can find a lot of stuff here, a lot of good support. But if you're new to this, there's a couple of things you're going to want to do. First of all, if you do have an Arduino board already, you can click here to the software tab, and that's going to be where you can download the development environment, which is where we're going to do all of our code, which will then be uploaded to the Arduino and ultimately control the Arduino and what we want to do with it. So depending on what operating system you're working on, Mac or Windows or Linux, go ahead and download the development environment. If you don't have a board, you can come up here to the Products tab and click Arduino. And they have listed out all of their boards, and they've categorized it based on what people use them for. And it kind of is, they've also got it categorized from entry level to more advanced boards as well. So if you're completely new, I recommend you come up here to the entry level and start with the Arduino Uno. This board is used by just about everyone who's getting started in this, including me. There's a lot of good support community for this board, and also a lot of easy tutorials developed for this board. So it's a great place to start, and it's pretty cheap as well. So those are the two things you're going to want to do. You're going to want to get a board and also download the software, the development environment. And once you have those two things, we can get started. So after you've downloaded the development environment, go ahead and start the program up. And you should get a screen that looks similar to the one that you see here. So let's take some time and go through the basics of what this is and how we use it. So if you start at the top, there's a couple of menus here and also a couple of buttons. So the buttons are the most important functions that we'll be using. You have a verify button here, which will check your code to make sure there's no errors or simple things that'll stop it from running correctly. There's also an upload button, and this is going to be what writes the code. This is the button that's going to write the code to the Arduino board. So it uploads it to the Arduino board, and then the Arduino board then continuously runs the code. After that, we have new, open, and save, and these are pretty just basic self-explanatory buttons. It creates a new file, open a file, save the file. There's also a couple of other ones in here. Go ahead and explore through these if you'd like. The tools one here will become important once it's time to hook up a board, because this is going to tell us which board we have, and then eventually this port will show up after you plug your board in, and you need to select the correct port. But for now, don't worry about that. We'll get into that later. Okay, so that's the menu buttons here. Next up, we have the development environment window here, which is where we're going to write all of our code. And there's really three main sections here. So there's an area above all of this, which is going to be where we will load libraries and define variables and things of that nature. Don't worry about the specifics of this right now. We'll get into all of this in more detail later. But for now, just keep in mind what the general layout here. So up here is where we're going to define variables, load libraries, all that. Next, you're going to see the void setup area here. And as it says, this section of code runs once when the board starts up. So every time the board gets power, it's going to run through this section first. And then after this section, all the code is executed here. It's going to move down to the void loop area here. And this is, as it says, is where you put all the majority of your code. And the way this loop works is it runs continuously. So it starts at the top, moves to the bottom, and once all the code is executed, it will jump back to the top and then run down again. And it does this continuously unless something tells it to stop, or you may have some code that calls another function or calls something from a library. But again, we'll get into the specifics of that. But for now, just keep in mind, up here is where we're going to define variables and load libraries. This is a setup area here that runs once. And then this is where the majority of our code is going to go right here that will run repeatedly. Okay, so now that we've gotten some of the basics out of the way, let's talk about how we connect our Arduino to our computer so that we can get started and begin coding. So first of all, there's one thing to keep in mind. If you are buying an Arduino for the first time, you're going to need a specific type of USB cable to connect it to your computer. Now, if you're using the Arduino Uno, you're going to need one that's similar to what you see here. Another way to do this is if you search for some of the Arduino starter kits, they oftentimes have the right cable bundled in with it. So you may be able to save a little bit of money by buying one of those Arduino starter kits. If you were looking for just the cord, you can do something like I did here, just search for Arduino USB cable, and that should come up with the right one that you need. It should be very similar to what you see here. So after you get the cable, the next step is going to be to actually plug it in. So let's go ahead and do that now and see what happens. I'm going to plug in mine. Okay, so now a couple of quick things we need to do, and then we're all ready to start. Come up here to the Tools menu and select whatever board you have. So in our case, we have the Uno, so that's already selected. Next step here, now you can see the port option here is bold, or it's regular text, and it should come up telling you your board and what COM port it's connected to. So make sure that's selected correctly. If sometimes you might have more than one connected, so just make sure you've got the right one connected there, and that is the right one for us. So now technically we're ready to get started. We have our board connected, and now if we were to hit the upload button, all this code would be verified and then sent to the board. And right now it wouldn't do anything because we don't have any code, but for now we're ready to go. So that's going to be all for this video. In the next videos we'll get into some more of the details in terms of variables and writing code and what it does, and by the end of this we're going to get into actually controlling circuits and doing some fun things. So that's all for this one. I'll see you on the next video.